Hello and welcome back to the coffee table, where we spill all the tea, or should I say coffee, on a lot of your favorite books. I'm Nina Gonzalez, your host, and on this episode, we'll be talking about The Hunger Games. So in the previous episode, we talked about the first 3 chapters of The Hunger Games, and on this episode, we'll be talking about chapters 4, 5, and 6. But before we get into that, let's start with a little recap. So in the first 3 episodes, a lot of stuff actually happened. So I think the most important thing we should focus on was that Primrose got chosen and Katniss volunteers as tribute for the Hunger Games. And basically the Hunger Games, we went over in the last episode, essentially they're a battle to the death where 2 tributes from each district have to fight each other until there's one winner. So yeah, that happens in the first chapter. Second chapter, Katniss volunteers. And then Peeta Mellark, who is a boy from Katniss's past, he's also chosen. And then in the final chapter, in chapter 3, they get to see their family for the final time. And the people who visit Katniss are her mother, her sister Gale, the baker, and the mayor's daughter. And then they get on the train that'll then take them to the capital. Now on to chapter 4. So chapter 4 mainly focuses on Katniss's time in the train that's transporting her and Peeta to the capital, and she's focusing or processing what just happened at the reaping, and also trying to decide her game plan for when the games actually start. So in the previous chapter, Katniss says her final goodbyes to her family, her friends, and boards the train to head into the capital where her training will begin. So the train part or scene in this book is a fairly eventful scene. Or what I consider to be an eventful scene. So first, Haymitch vomits on himself, and Peeta has to clean up his little mess, which makes Katniss question his integrity. She really wonders if his kindness is a plan to later take her down take her down in the arena and to get under her skin so she trusts him, and he stabs her in the back. So Peeta offers to clean up Haymitch, and so she heads to her room. And when she gets to her room, the train stops, and Katniss throws out the cookies that Peeta's father gave her, or the baker gave her. So she, the cookies, they land in this little area that has dandelions in it, and the dandelions, the dandelion patch is enough to send Katniss into this flashback. And this was after Peeta had given her the bread, and had given her the burnt bread, and she had turned away from his face and saw dandelions, which gave her this brilliant idea. So when she got home, she took her sister to the meadow that was plagued with dandelions. So she took her sister and this bucket, and they picked dandelions for about a mile until the bucket was full, to which she would take it home, and her family would have a feast of dandelion salad and some of the remaining bread that Peeta had to give Katniss. So after that, Katniss and her sister would go out to the meadow to try and harvest herbs and greens that would help keep them alive for longer. So, and that also gave Katniss the courage to do other things, like go into the forest where she would start her hunting career. She would first start off close to the fence, but then she would progressively go in deeper and get more courageous, and she would hunt bigger and bigger animals every time she would go in. And that also encouraged her to go to the Hob, which is basically the black market for District 12, where she used to be scared of it, but now she was able to go there alone and stuff, and she was able to go there and trade. And so once Katniss turned 12, which was in May, she was able to sign up to get bread and grain called, I think, terraces or something along those lines, which basically every time you sign up, they give you bread and the capital or District 12 would give you bread and grain, but in return they would put your name in the bowl for the Hunger Games again. So let's say you had your bowl you had your name in 18 times. If you bought another terrace, they would put your name in 19 times, or once more to make it 19 times. So she was able to buy terraces, and like she would always find ways to provide for her family. And due to all this, Katniss's mother slowly came back to them. Primrose, she forgave her mother immediately, but Katniss never forgave her for leaving them, for neglecting them, for leaving them alone to suffer. So Katniss never forgave her mother for leaving them, but like now she thought of like now that she was about to die, she never got to apologize to her mother. Like, yeah, sure, she said I love you, but in that moment her mother might not have heard it or realized, so she felt a lot of guilt and a lot of pressure. And so by that time, when her flashback was over, it was already nighttime. And Katniss, she was very like she wanted to cry, but she was too numb to cry, so she just fell asleep. So in the morning, she went out and she was greeted by Haymitch, Ify, and Peeta, and like they all like ate this beautifully decorated breakfast feast. So Katniss immediately jumps to how Haymitch was supposed to give them advice and help them, but the only thing he tells them is stay alive. So Peeta and Katniss don't take this lightly, so Peeta throws some punches, or not punches. He throws Haymitch's spear on the floor, and Haymitch starts throwing punches until Peeta's knocked down to the floor. So then, once he reaches back for his spirit, Katniss stabs a knife through the wood, like barely missing his finger, and he's like really impressed by their skills. So he tells them to show more and stuff, and after he realizes their power and like what they can do, he starts giving them advice for the games. So once his advice is over and the survival tips are over, the train stops at the capital where Peeta and Katniss really begin their training. In chapter 5, we meet a new character! And but before we actually get to the new character, Katniss, the train, it's in the capital now, and Katniss is in the capital, and where we find her, she's getting waxed. Very, like, and in the book, she's expressing a lot of pain. So you can tell it hurts a lot. So the day after the reaping usually comes the opening ceremony, where all the tributes are properly introduced. So Katniss is getting her quote-unquote makeover, where she's getting waxed, bathed, and getting like a spa treatment so she looks nice when her stylist comes in, who is our new character. So Cinna, however you want to pronounce it, he's Katniss's new stylist, and he introduced himself. And Katniss, she expected her stylist to be this very flashy, flamboyant person with like a lot of makeup and a lot of like plastic surgery, but he wasn't. Katniss described him to be fairly attractive. He didn't have much makeup on. He has a natural dark hair, no body alterations other than like this golden eyeliner that brings out his beautiful green eyes. So he introduces himself and then starts examining her bare body. but not touching her. And he's examining until, and like he's asking her simple questions like, oh yeah, who did your hair? It's very beautiful and stuff. So once he's done with the examining, he's like, Katniss, you can put on your robe. So she puts on her robe and they head to the separate room. And so Cinna presses this button that brings their food to them without like having to ask anyone. The food just appears there. And Katniss wonders like how the food is made and what it must be like to have food like delivered to you by just the press of a button. And like Cinna could sense that Katniss, he could sense her discomfort, and he could sense her discomfort in the new environment, and like he could tell that it was very weird and unnatural for her, and to see like all these people living in such luxuries and having such luxuries, it must be weird to her. And Cinna, he's like, seeing all these rich people, like, we must look despicable to you. And she's like, oh my god, how can he read my mind? Because that's exactly what she was thinking. So after they eat their dinner or lunch, they get to discuss the plans for the opening ceremony and how Katniss is going to dress. Since for the opening ceremony, you're supposed to wear something that suggests your district's principal industry. For example, District 11, they're in charge of agriculture. District 4 is in charge of fishing. District 3 is in charge of they're in charge of factories, and District 1 is in charge of making beautiful riches and very nice, fancy, bougie things for the capital. And District 12 is in charge of coal. And this also explains why Katniss's father died in a mining accident and not like an accident, like a factory accident or a farming accident. So Katniss was pretty scared since District 12 tributes usually end up in pretty skimpy outfits with hats that have lights on them, since mining apparel isn't, the prettiest. So she was especially scared because one year this very not the brightest designer thought it would be funny or it would look nice to have the tributes be completely naked and be covered in black dust to represent coal. And so Katniss was really scared about that. So Katniss actually got lucky since Cinna decides to focus on what coal does. And what does coal do? It burns. So Katniss later finds herself in a simple black unitard with shiny leather boots and a fluttering cape made of, and I quote, streams of orange, yellow, and red with a matching headpiece that defines the costume. So Cinna planned to actually light the costume's cape on fire and the crown on fire with this synthetic fire that was just for show. So Katniss, being Katniss, was really scared because she didn't know it was a synthetic fire, and she thought she was gonna burn to death. So she was like, oh my god, I'm gonna burn to death, I'm gonna die. But Cinna, he's like, he wanted to show, or he wanted to express, or show that Katniss would be known as Katniss the Girl on Fire. So, once they're at the area where they're about to be released for everyone to see, Cinna comes out with a lit torch, and he lights Katniss and Peeta's cape on fire, and they both have the same outfit. The main focus of the outfit is basically just the cape and stuff. So he lights the capes on fire, and he tells Peeta and Katniss to hold each other's hand. And at first, Katniss was very scared. She was like frozen in place. But once she gets a glimpse of herself, she realized just how beautiful she is. So she lifts her chin higher, gives her best smile, and with her free hand she waves, gives kisses, and then people are like throwing roses. She blows kisses in their directions, and her name was being chanted like Katniss, Katniss. And at the end of the ceremony, the 12 chariots line up in a circle in front of the training center where the girl who was on fire would live until the games begin. Okay, so chapter 6, how I kind of summarize it, it's not going to be the most interesting one, so you can skip it. You can skip chapter 6, and I'll put the time to skip it right here. But so chapter 6, once the opening ceremony is complete, Haymitch, Peeta, Katniss, Effie, Portia, who is Peeta's stylist, and Cinna all head to the 12th floor, and Effie to clean up like in their own rooms and stuff, and Effie makes some rather rude jokes and comments about the people in District 12. But after that, they head to their separate sleeping quarters, and they all like shower, and Katniss is fairly surprised by how advanced everything is, since there are like hundreds of buttons for the showers, and from the press of a button you can just get food delivered to your kind of dorm. And she was also impressed by how big it was, because it was even bigger than her house back home. So after that, they all head to dinner, where the dinner was supposedly meant to be for planning strategies, but really all they did was making small talk. So at the dinner, they're just eating, drinking wine, and there's some like people, mostly little kids dressed in white outfits, and Katniss she's drawn to one of them because she recognizes her, and she knows that, oh yeah, she has a gut feeling that she's not gonna have a good memory, or she didn't have a good past with that girl. So none of the kids were saying words, which kind of confused Katniss, but she's like, whatever. So one of the little kids that Katniss, recognizes is serving cake and stuff, and Katniss is like trying to make small talk with the little girl, but she doesn't speak. And the girl is like this girl with dark red hair and beautiful features, like she looks like a porcelain doll. So Katniss asks Effie about, Katniss is like, oh yeah, I recognize this girl for some reason. And Katniss asks Effie about it, and Effie thinks it's impossible that Katniss knows an AVOX. And what AVOXs are, they're people who have committed a horrible crime, and as punishment, their tongues have been cut off. So Peeta kind of senses that Katniss is about to get in trouble for talking to an AVOX, so he gives a random name, and since she recognizes it, he gives a random name that Katniss may or may not recognize, and Katniss kind of goes with it. So she's let off the hook, and then during the dinner, they watch a replay of the opening ceremony. So after the replay and the opening ceremony, Peeta's like, oh, have you seen the roof yet? And they go check it out, see the garden on the roof, and then Katniss has this urge to tell Peeta about the girl and how she recognizes her. So Katniss said that one day when her and Gale were in the woods, everything stopped. Everything went quiet, like the birds, everything. And then this little girl, the same exact girl with this little boy, they appeared there, but Katniss and Gale were hiding. And then out of nowhere, the ship kind of comes out of nowhere, and it launches a spear through the little boy's heart, killing him definitely. And then it abducts the little girl. And Katniss was especially traumatized because for a split second, the little girl looked at her and kind of looked her in the eyes and was like, help me. But Katniss and Gale didn't help. And she was traumatized by that. So the little girl was abducted, and that's where Katniss' story ends, and she's she acts really concerned about it, and she's just very lost about it. So Pete and her, they go back down to their rooms, and Katniss heads straight to bed and wonders if the little Avox girl will enjoy seeing her die. And it's time for our favorite part, recap, favorite parts, ratings, predictions, questions, and our outro. So a bit of a recap. They're on the train of each chapter. Chapter 4, they're on the train. Chapter 5, the opening ceremony. And Chapter 6, Avox Girl. That's our recap. For my favorite part, I would have to say when, I know I said I didn't really like Chapter 6, but my favorite part was when we found out about the Avox Girl. I think that was I don't know, I just really liked it. And also the opening ceremony when Katniss is like blowing kisses and all that stuff. I just really like that part. So for ratings, I would say I give it Chapter 5, I would say a solid 6 out of 10. Not my favorite, but not bad. Chapter 4 is a 6 out of 10. Chapter 5, I would say is an 8 out of 10. And Chapter 6 is... I don't want to give it too low of a rating. That's one of my favorite scenes. I would say 7 out of 10. Like, there's not much in it, but it's still a kind of nice chapter. So, for our predictions, you can put your predictions down below, per usual. And for our questions, is the question I asked you guys. Which district would you guys like to be in most? Or which district do you think you would be in? Alright, bye. You just listened to another episode of Coffee Table with your host, Daniela. Subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Bye!